Now, on how this deal came about, I am joined now by Matthew Whitaker. He's the U.S. Ambassador to NATO, who was with the president in the Oval Office when this announcement was made. Ambassador, thank you for joining us. I want to start with that weapons announcement. Axios reporting that the U.S. will send $10 billion in weapons to NATO allies in the first wave. That includes missiles, air defense weaponry, and artillery shells. Is that accurate? And is there any more details you can get into about the aspects of this deal?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to, get into the specifics of what we're sending, but this is obviously an important moment and a pivot point for this war. Obviously, President Trump has wanted peace since he came to office. He has tried to get Vladimir Putin to come to the table and negotiate an enduring peace that has failed. And I think he's, decided, as he announced today, that Ukraine is entitled to defend themselves. America makes the best weapons in the world, and we're going to sell our European NATO allies, together with Canada, American armaments, and they'll supply that to Ukraine. So it's a smart plan, and at the same time, I think it's good for the American taxpayer because, as you know, the Biden administration sent hundreds of millions of dollars worth of aid to Ukraine with nothing to show for it. And this is going to create American jobs and I think really deliver for the American taxpayer. So it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, and it doesn't sound like the deal will allow Ukraine to directly purchase weapons from the U.S. Is that accurate? And is that something that the Trump administration would be open to in the future?
Yeah, I really think that's a distinction without a difference. At the end of the day, Ukraine has been able to really fend off Russia's invasion. For the last year and a half, Russia has gained about 1% more territory in Ukraine and lost hundreds of thousands of soldiers as casualties. And so it's been a dramatic slaughter on both sides, but especially on the Russian side. The president obviously thinks that a line has been crossed when it comes to, sending rockets and missiles into cities and hitting civilians, and just to stoke fear and chaos in a society. So I think we've, at the same time that we're trying to make sure that Ukraine can defend themselves, obviously the president is trying to create the conditions to get Vladimir Putin to the table, to get a ceasefire and to ultimately negotiate an enduring peace.
Now, under President Biden, we know it was a priority to try to aid Ukraine, but there were concerns about how to provide Ukraine with air defenses without jeopardizing the U.S. own military readiness. So how much can the U.S. realistically help before it potentially impacts our own readiness here at home?
Well, the great thing about the NATO alliance especially is that all NATO allies have visibility as to what everyone has in their stockpiles. And obviously, we manufacture the Patriot missile system that's for air defense. But at the same time, you're seeing a robust defense industrial base created and has been created in the last 3 years in Ukraine and has capacity. And so I think there's opportunities for allies to invest in Ukraine's industrial base and at the same time buy great American armaments like Patriot missiles defense systems. So it's a win-win, and we just need to make sure that we're smart about this. And the nice thing about everyone being on the same page, whether that's the Secretary of Defense for the United States or the Defense Minister from Germany, who's in town today, and I had a chance to chat with briefly. We're all on the same page, and we're all making sure that our alliance is strong and that we are all stronger together. And so, and Ukraine has clearly become Europe's, desire to continue the fighting and to help Ukraine defend themselves. And so the United States obviously has a role in that, and that role President Trump has defined today, which is to sell weapons to our European allies that they'll provide to Ukraine.
And specifically on the price tag of what we can expect for these weapons, is there an estimate of what the administration expects to receive in compensation?
Well, it's going to be billions of dollars. The NATO summit last month, our allies agreed to start spending 5% of their GDP ultimately on defense. That's going to end up being trillions of dollars, hundreds of billions. And so it's a really an amazing opportunity. And so I would expect it'll be in the billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars. But some of it just depends how much longer this war goes on and how much longer the killing and death that is happening on the battlefield continues.
Yeah. And turning now to Russia, obviously, we heard the president having more pointed language towards President Putin. This is somebody he knew from his first term in office and certainly over the past 6 or so months. Why wait this additional 50 days to impose these tariffs or sanctions on Russia? Why not just do it now?
Yeah, I think, President Trump has been trying to see if there's a deal to be made. And obviously he is negotiating the conditions to make sure that, Vladimir Putin comes to the table and negotiates. And so I think he has given him some time. 50 days is not a very long time, in all honesty. And to give him that time to finally come to the table and agree to a ceasefire and then work towards an enduring peace. And I think, 50 days is a very short amount of time, but at the same time, it's not today. And so I think it gives them a little bit of time to come to the table. And that's what I expect will happen.
And what do you think ultimately led to this ultimatum that the President Trump, decided that there had to be some sort of more specific deadline in order to see some real progress in a potential ceasefire between Moscow and Ukraine?
Yeah, I think President Trump has been watching this situation very carefully, and so have those of us that are in his administration. We see the intelligence briefings. We understand the real situation on the ground. And I think he just feels like the time is now. I think, the Ukrainians have been incredibly brave in their defense of their country. They're, have essentially stalemated a country that is dramatically bigger than their own, and have kind of organically created a defense industry that didn't exist 3 years ago. So, I think there's a lot of reasons to believe that Ukraine needs our help. They need it now, and I think President Trump decided the time was now in order to again give them more defensive weapons, more weapons generally, in order to create the environment that brings Vladimir Putin to the table and finally gets him to agree to end the killing.
And Ambassador, you have known President Trump for a long time. You've been involved in Republican politics for a long time. What do you say to those Republican supporters of the president who voted for him last year because he was going to take a step back from foreign entanglements, because he was going to take a step back from U.S. support for Ukraine or potential military operations overseas like we saw in Iran? What do you say to those supporters who feel like he has been sort of listening to the quote-unquote warmongers of the Republican Party more so than the people that he supported him during his campaign?
Yeah, I would say they're just probably not really paying attention to what's really going on. Obviously the strategic bombing that President Trump executed on Iran ended the 12-day war. He's brought peace between India and Pakistan. We're going to see a peace deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan. We're going to probably see a peace deal very soon in Gaza between Hamas and Israel. So President Trump is a peacemaker, but at the same time, if to get peace through strength, sometimes you have to demonstrate your strength, and I think that's what President Trump has judiciously done. And at the same time, the deal that was announced today is a win-win for the American taxpayers. It is America First deal in that we are selling armaments that we don't need, that are in our stockpiles, but do not make us strategically compromised, and we're selling that to our European allies, who are then providing that to Ukraine. I think that's a win-win. That's an America First foreign policy, and so you add all of that together, and I would say it's quite the opposite.
All right, Matthew Whitaker, U.S. Ambassador to NATO. Thank you for joining us and for your insights on this, sir.
Yeah, thank you.